This is the final part of our series, Expressions of Love, which has explored some of God's attributes. We've covered that his primary attribute is love. That is the one word that comprehensively defines God. Flowing out of his love are an abundance of other amazing attributes. We studied the fact that God is righteous and just. We studied that God is joyful. We studied that the reality that God moves towards vulnerable people. And today I'd like to build on that idea that God moves towards vulnerable people and specifically focus in on orphans. One of the groups of people that God makes it a priority to care for is any child who has lost their parents for any reason at all. It does not get any more vulnerable than a child who loses parents or never was able to meet their parents at all. King David describes God like this in Psalm 68. A father to the fatherless, a defender of widows. This is God in his holy dwelling. God sets the lonely in families. David is saying this is who God is at his core. And the rest of Scripture backs it up. God used an orphan, Moses, to lead his people out of slavery and to the doorstep of the Promised Land. The Old Testament law consistently made provisions to ensure that orphans were cared for. Why? Because it was really important to God. This is not a minor theme tucked away in an obscure corner of Scripture. God cares for the orphans, and it's a thread that runs through the entire biblical story. In Isaiah 1:17 says, the prophet calls God's people to defend the oppressed, take up the cause of the fatherless, plead the case of the widow. This wasn't optional. This is what faithfulness to God actually looked like in practice. James 1:27 echoes this, calling pure and genuine faith the kind that looks after orphans and widows in their distress. And then there's Jesus himself, who consistently stopped for the child when everyone else walked past, who said in Mark 10:14 that welcoming a vulnerable child in his name was the same as welcoming him. The God of the Bible is not distant or indifferent to the child who has no one. He is, as David wrote, a father to the fatherless. And that's not a metaphor. That is a description of God's character. At times, it's easy to feel like God is distant, not that involved in the day-to-day, especially when things go wrong, when things are broken. It's easy for us to wonder, God, where are you? This is where an accurate understanding of who God is so important for us. When things go wrong here on earth, God promises he is active, always. He moves towards those who have been hurt, those who are vulnerable. If we feel like God is not present in a broken situation, it means we're either not understanding what God's presence is, or we're just missing it. Or the people he's activating as resources to solve the problem are not responding to God's movement. So there's a gap. Either way, God is not distant or absent in the face of hardship, especially when it involves vulnerable children. Our God has deep compassion and deep concern, and he moves to restore always. That is who he is. He's described as a father to the fatherless. And if we are his people, then it's good for it to become a description of ours as well. One of the things that drew my wife Shauna and me together was that we shared a similar value. We both believe that one of the best ways to live a fulfilled life is to live with purpose, meaning, and sacrifice. We wanted to live in a way that made a difference. Now, I don't mean to put us on a pedestal. Don't misunderstand. We have a lot of challenges in our marriage. I don't listen all that well sometimes. I forget simple things. I get defensive when she tries to bring up something about me. She's a perfectionist, and she's never wrong, which is super annoying. Anyway, we're two humans with a lot of flaws who love each other and are doing our best. But what we do have going for us is a common vision. We want our lives to matter. Before we had kids, we loved to go on mission trips. We went to Kenya in 2005 and 2006, visiting a specific orphanage in Kenya. It had a profound impact that would ultimately change our lives and fulfill a desire that we didn't even know we had. Those experiences planted a desire to adopt a child who was orphaned. We explored international adoption, specifically through Kenya or Ethiopia, but God led us elsewhere. Now, before I go any further with our story, I just want to let you know that I do have my family's permission to share our story of fostering and adopting. At a certain point in our journey, when we really didn't have clarity on what we were going to do about adoption, Shauna met a family who had adopted 2 kids through the foster care system right here in the East Bay. Shauna asked them a million questions, I'm sure. I wasn't there, but that's what she does. She came home and told me about it, saying she feels like this is what we should do to build our family in a way that will hopefully care for a child in need. That set us on a path that would define the rest of our lives. Isaiah moved into our home as a beautiful 21-month-old baby boy through the foster care system in Contra Costa County. We were his 6th home, unfortunately. The parental rights were close to being terminated, and reunification wasn't an option. So not too long after, we were able to adopt Isaiah, which was one of the best moments of our lives. We had such a great experience fostering and then adopting Isaiah that about a year later, we decided we wanted to do it again. A few months later, Kente moved into our home. He was 10 months old. We were his 6th home also. Reunification with his biological family was still an option for Kente at the beginning, so we entered the process thinking that we may just be his foster parents for a while. But over time, reunification became non-viable. So after a year of fostering, we were blessed to adopt Kente as well. But I want to be honest about something. Our joy on the day we became a forever family was also someone else's loss. Adoption begins with a broken story. Before there is celebration, there's usually grief. Before a family is formed, there's a family fractured. Adoption is beautiful, but it's also painful. We celebrate what God redeems while acknowledging what was lost. Families were broken apart so that ours could form. Isaiah and Kente didn't just gain parents. They first lost something that every child deserves. We try to never forget that. The gratitude we feel is real, but it lives right next to grief. Grief we didn't cause, grief we can't fix, though we can acknowledge it. It has never been simple, and it never should be. And yet, for many people, adoption is still viewed with like a suspicion or even shame. It's common for many cultures around the world and throughout history to have a negative stigma surrounding adoption. Often there are subtle undertones in culture suggesting that one of the ways you can tell that someone is blessed by God is because they have a bunch of children. And that can be one way God blesses us, but that value can create the mindset that if you don't produce your own kids, then something is wrong with you, which isn't true. But there's another reason adoption matters so much to Christians. It's not just something Christians do, it's at the center of the gospel itself. Romans 8:15 says, the spirit that brought about your adoption to sonship, and by him we cry, Abba, Father. The Spirit himself testifies with our spirit that we are God's children. Now, if we are children, then we are heirs, heirs of God, and co-heirs with Christ. Those who follow Jesus have been adopted by God the Father, have become his children, and are heirs to his entire kingdom. For those of us who follow Jesus, the best thing that had ever happened in our lives wasn't our wedding day, our graduation, our promotion at work, or the birth of a child. Those are all amazing things. But the best thing that has ever happened to you was the Spirit moving in your life in a way that led the God of the entire universe to adopt you as his child. The most wealthy and powerful being adopted you, made you his heir, promising you his newly adopted child, that everything he has is now yours. The gospel isn't merely that God forgives sinners. The gospel is that God brings strangers into his family. We weren't simply pardoned, we were adopted. We weren't merely rescued from something, we were welcomed into something. God didn't just cancel our debt, he gave us his name. So, if you are a follower of Jesus, the concept of adoption should not carry any stigma whatsoever. In fact, it should evoke joy and gratitude, making us love all that adoption represents. There are moments when I'm frustrated with the church, with how far some versions of it have drifted from what Jesus actually modeled. And as a result, it's hurt a lot of people. However, one of the things the church has done really well over the last 2,000 years is take care of orphans. Any historian who has studied this issue would acknowledge that invariably, Christians lead the way in caring for and adopting orphans. Usually when an orphanage is opened, anywhere around the world, it's started by Christians. Historically, adoption centers have been started by Christians. The early church was famous for stopping the problem of infanticide in the Roman Empire because of how they rescued discarded babies. During World War II and the Holocaust, it was often Christians who risked their lives to take in Jewish babies to protect them from the Nazis. This is a part of our legacy as Christians. This is what we do. But if we're honest, what this calling actually looks like up close is both beautiful and it's brutal. Sean and I have lived it, and we want to be honest about both sides. Both of our boys experienced severe trauma in their earliest months. The very window that research tells us is the most critical for how a child learns to attach, to trust, and to feel safe in the world. When that foundation is disrupted, the effects don't just stay in infancy. They can travel with a child into every home, every relationship, and every moment as they wonder if they are truly wanted. There's a reason outcomes for kids who go through the foster system are so poor. To move from home to home, experiencing loss and instability that no child should ever have to face, it's amazing the statistics aren't worse. But for another human to be willing to step into that cycle of trauma and brokenness, a cycle that is often generational, an attempt to show so much love and grace that the cycle changes, is a miraculous movement of God. I mentioned the verse by James, the brother of Jesus, in the letter he wrote. Let me read the whole verse. It says, "Pure and genuine religion in the sight of God the Father means caring for the orphan and widows in their distress and refusing to let the world corrupt you." Now, it's important not to miss the second half of this verse, refusing to let the world corrupt you. What does that mean? Well, it can mean many things, but one of which is the temptation that the world has to cause us to prioritize our own comfort and security in this life above all else. It's so easy to let the busyness and the brokenness of this world cause us to turn inward and just try to protect what we have, protect my happiness, my house, my kids, my country, my money. Our cultural narrative revolves around preserving our comfort and our personal peace, pushing away anything hard, messy, and broken. We try to shield ourselves from it. We pull our own kids away from it. But the reality is that the gospel narrative demands different priorities. And the longer I walk with Jesus, the more I recognize that prioritizing comfort above all else can be an enemy to a living and breathing faith within me. When comfort and security become our highest priorities, we instinctively start building a case for why we shouldn't move towards the vulnerable. And in trying to protect ourselves, we end up shielding ourselves from the very people God asks us to love. Fostering or adopting is certainly not comfortable. Our boys carried their early wounds into our home, and those wounds bring pain and confusion that we were all overwhelmed by at times. But God was always with us. And I'm so proud of who our boys have become. They are amazing young men in so many ways. They are strong in ways that have nothing to do with us and everything to do with who God made them to be. Now, for many who foster, the goal isn't to adopt like Shauna and I did. We are so grateful for how our story played out, but oftentimes the preferable goal is to reunify a child with their biological family. Many people assume that foster care is primarily about adoption, but most of the time it isn't. The goal is usually reunification. Foster parents step into a child's life, love them deeply, and often help prepare them to return home. It's one of the most selfless acts I can imagine. And that's why it's so important to us as a church community to support and care for families who are on this journey. One of the primary ways we do this is by partnering with Foster the City, an organization that helps the church effectively engage in foster care. Check out this story that they put together to help paint this picture.
When I found out I was pregnant with Will, I was in Florida. My first thought was probably not the best one, but it was like, why now? Out of any time in my life that I could have gotten pregnant, like this time where I have nothing to give this baby. Using was my life. I used my whole pregnancy up to the day before I had Loyal. I was thinking Loyal's dad, who I had talked to again, said he was gonna come be the family and whatnot. Well, he got out of jail and never came. You know, when that happened, it kind of like threw me. Like I was already kind of losing it, starting to see things a little bit. But then after that happened, I really started seeing things. And I thought there was stuff in my legs and my skin. And then I started seeing things in Loyal's skin. And that's when I ended up calling for the ambulance. I guess I was really close to where like the social service area is. And I could hear them talking. They're about to take Loyal. And then when they came in, police officer made me give him to him. So I gave him up.
We got a call for our first placement. She said, "Hi, Alicia. I'm a social worker, and are you able to take in an 8-month-old boy?" And I remember saying, like, yes, of course we can. And so she said, all I can tell you is he's been cleared from the hospital, and he's in good health. His name is Loyal. We just had the most like surreal night of someone's little boy is in our home right now and is with us, and we don't know anything about him. All of a sudden, here we are, and we're gonna jump in and take care of him. And I remember he was laying on our rug his first night doing like tummy time. And I remember me just thinking like, what did we do? And what are we doing?
Yeah, that's a good job. Yeah.
I was told, like, okay, it's time to do visits with his mom. On like the third or fourth visit, I had dropped Loyal off and I had left. It was for an hour, and then I came back and she comes out and she's walking down the hallway to me. I just remember telling her like, hey, I want you to know I am not trying to steal him from you, and that I'm here to help him and help you.
I still had this, worry in my brain because I don't have him all the time. And like, I just worried about this bond that they were creating. And like, that was really hard for me. While I was in recovery, I met this girl named Nikki. She had a really, really close relationship with her foster family. And at first I thought that was so weird. I was like, I didn't know how she could do it. One day she broke it down. She's like, they can be your best advocate. Like, I just didn't believe it until I started seeing it with her. One day the kids were sick, and immediately what did the foster parents do is they brought over some medicine for her and the baby. It wasn't just about the baby, it was about getting them both well. And like, it made me look at it differently, like, yes, he's part of their family, but he's also my family too, and like, it just kind of had me look at things different.
All of a sudden I could tell like, oh, she's looking at me differently, and she's talking with me more. She's sharing more, and she's sharing about her personal life, and she's opening up more. It just like filled me with hope of like what this could be. Like this could be something so beautiful because now she's opening herself up to me. Now how can we work together to see Loyal like flourish and feel so loved as he transitions from being with us to going home with Mom. 2 nights before Loyal was going back to his mom, we invited this community of people to come to the house to just pray over Loyal. And we said, bring your kids, because they've been a part of the process and they love Loyal. And we invited this group of people who over the last 1.5 years were with us through the ups and downs. And all of our kids like prayed over him and for his future and for his mom. And then the adults sat around a table and we just prayed scripture over him, and we prayed that we would continue to be a part of his life, and we prayed for Jerry Lee by name and that their bond would grow and that there would be healing in there. Even I was crying and I couldn't pray, and I just remember having people who prayed for me because I said I can't pray tonight, and so I had just friends around who prayed for me on behalf of Loyal. And so yeah, it's something I look back on and I couldn't do it without him. So
February 28th, I got him back. That was great.
And I said, I just want you to know I will not reach out to you. If you want to continue this, then you can contact me, but we would love to still be a part of your life and Loyal's life.
So 3 weeks after I got full custody of Loyal that day was saying he missed them and he wanted to see them, which I'm not gonna lie, that was a little hard for me because I was all in my lovey mode. But I reached out and I texted Alicia and I said, can we FaceTime?
Jerry Lee was like, hey, so I wanted to ask if you guys would consider being Loyal's godparents. At that point, I didn't know what it even looked like, but I was like, doesn't matter. Any opportunity to continue to be a part of both of their lives was something that we really wanted.
You know, they've raised him so good, the times they had with him, and he was so happy, and he could have came back any kind of ways, and he didn't come back broken. He came back perfect. Why wouldn't I want to keep that side of him still in his life?
So as God was shifting our hearts from, oh, we're going to adopt, to now let me show you how to love this other family and welcome them into yours. It was God continually showing me the gospel in my own life, how much I needed it. It was this act of him teaching me, how do you take stranger and love them into family? But first I had to let God root out all of that in me for me to then see, oh, this is what you have for us. It's not for us just to add a little person to our family, but to grow our family through their extended family.
In the East Bay area, there are more children entering the foster care system than there are foster families ready to open their hearts and their homes. Every day in the East Bay, children are being removed from their biological families due to allegations of abuse or neglect. In addition to this harsh reality, many of these kids are shuttled around and displaced from their communities due to a shortage of loving and supportive foster homes. I believe that Cornerstone is uniquely positioned and called to answer this need. Alongside other great churches, our vision is that one day there will be more foster homes than foster kids. And a family would have to join a wait list to become a foster family, as opposed to the kids being on a wait list because there aren't enough homes. What if we help change this? Now, this isn't a new vision for us as a church. It's about continuing with a vision that has been a priority for Cornerstone for the last 20 years. Over that time, since we made this a priority, hundreds of Cornerstone families have opened their homes to foster children. And I'm so proud that we're about this as a church. Okay, I wanna pause here and acknowledge that I know some of you are feeling something right now. Maybe it's curiosity, maybe it's compassion, maybe it's discomfort. Maybe it's a nudge from the Holy Spirit. I'm not saying every Christian should become a foster parent. But I am saying every Christian should ask God what role they might play in caring for vulnerable children. Also, you might be sitting there thinking, okay, this isn't for me. I don't have a spare bedroom, or I'm single, or I'm retired. My life is stretched too thin as it is. Okay, hear me on this. Fostering a child is one way to answer this call, but it's not the only way. Foster families need people around them to make it work. They need someone to drop off a meal during a hard week, someone trained to provide respite care so parents can catch a breath, someone to mentor a teenager or drive a kid to a visit or advocate for these children or commit to praying for a family by name. One of our values as a church is that we share any advantages we have with those who are less advantaged. Whatever you have, time, a skill, a kitchen, a prayer life, there is a place for it here. If you want to take the next step, scan the QR code on the screen to find out information about an upcoming informational meeting. If you're attending online, that same information is on our website. And your area pastor for your campus will share more in their weekly email this coming week, including ways to get involved in your campus's foster ministry. Okay, many of you are gathered right now in neighborhood churches. Many of you are watching online right now. Either way, I wanted to run through a couple questions for you to process with your group or by yourself about the message today. First of all, how does understanding your own story as one of adoption by God change the way you see vulnerable or broken people around you? Or another question is, where do you feel the tension most between the gospel's call to move toward the hard and broken and your own pull towards comfort and self-protection? Well, I hope you have a great discussion time and time to process this. Thank you for listening. We love you.